Here at altc, and I'm really very excited to welcome someone who is very special for chairing this particular session, whom many of my colleagues from ALT and also some of our members I know have met at the wonderful EdTech conference that our colleagues in Ireland from the Irish Learning Technology Association organize each year. Now, when we took our president, Martin Weller, there this year, we all came back with the clear mission to steal the very best bit of the EdTech conference, and we asked permission, and they kindly let us borrow a very special Tom Farrelly for chairing the session. So, I hope I'm not going to have to do any comparing for the next half an hour, but give it up for Tom, who's going to come on stage now and show you how to Gasta.
If this bombs, it's Martin Weller's poor lack of judgment. Martin Weller, I mean, I was like all sort of fanboy, you know, and being in EdTech and you're living in Ireland and you quote this man. And finally we're sitting down at the dinner there, and a friend of mine says, what did you talk about? Data analytics. Is the VLE dead? No, our blind dogs. It would be funny if it's not, but it is actually true. That's exactly what we talk about. So yes, so Gasta. So I suppose the Japanese have Pachachka or Pechakucha, which is obviously very organised. This being Irish is a little bit manic. I mean, talking about conferences, there's an international linguistic conference, and a Spanish-speaking linguist who says to the Irish professor, he says, tell me, do you have an Irish award like Manana? The Irish guy talked for a moment and says, I don't think we have a word which indicates such a degree of urgency. So, in order to get things done, this only works, and I have to be honest, I'm very nervous. Because, you know, will English people get behind it? Will you I actually meant that as a compliment. I said, will the English? I just assumed my Celtic cousins would have gone. Although you didn't vote for us when it came to the Rugby World Cup. But I'm not bitter. Anyway, it only works if people get involved. So Gasta means quick chit chat. So it's sort of 5 minutes of frenetic. We'll do a countdown to start. Then we'll do a countdown to finish as well. And when you stop, you will stop. Now, you walk away from a conference, you say, what did I take away? That I learned about the latest technology. I mean, do we think about how we actually do our work in learning technology? Do we think about power relationships? Do we think about data analytics? No. What I want you to take away from this is how to count in Irish. Osquailga. Thanks to Dale Kelly there. I said, you know, technology, he's a lovely YouTube video, so I just took a couple of stills. So we count down each Gasta will be counted down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's important that each and every one of you knows how to count. So as I said, there'll be people here who've done doctorates and they would have found them easier than the next 2 minutes. I want everybody to join in. Ahain, the pronunciation, ahain. Once again, ahain. With a bit of speed, ahain. That's not bad. I feel a bit like sort of dough a deer. This is actually just dough. It's straightforward. If you've seen Hills of Road, Sound of Music, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. That's very easy. Now, tree. There's not much invention there. A hain, a dough, a tree. Now you think, this Irish language is easy. Oh yes. Oh yes. Well, as anybody who's ever watched Father Chad will know, it's not that easy. I was just telling Laurie Phipps there, my son there, well, he's our son, my wife is here. He works in an Irish bar in Vancouver, and a few weeks ago they had a Father Kedman, and all the bar staff dressed up. And these two Canadians were very afraid of giving insult, as we all are now. And look, I don't mean to be rude, had a My Lovely Horse competition. Now, for, give that one a go. Oh, lads, this is too easy. So we'll just revise where we are. A hay, a doe, a tree, a car. And again, a hay, a doe, a tree, a car. Lads, I have to go. I'll be going back saying they're brilliant over there. Cooey. Yeah? A cooey. Will you try it? A hay, a doe, a tree, a car, a cooey. And on your own now. You're big enough now. I'm going to take the wheels off now. Ready? A hay, a doe, a tree, a car, a cooey. That's not bad. Very well done. Now, and then, when the person starts off, we give them a good lusty Gasta. I don't want to be loud. Now, we have Hardy Phipps here, a man we all know and love, but today he's literally the fulcrum of Gasta. Laurie, please stand up there so everyone can see you. Just stand up. All right. Normally, we have a definite left and right. But sadly, not. So, Laurie, you are my fulcrum. This side here, my left, which is K. On the right, Gas. K, Gas. So what we do, we have a bit of a count off between one side and the other. So, yeah, just to get us all going. It's late in the day, isn't it? So on this. And the arms. Come on, yes, arms. Don't let it down. I need these people to do this. That's very good. Oh, yes. You will not believe how nervous I've been. And a lot of people said they won't do it, but they have done it. Now, our first count going up here. Go all the way, no person in fairness. From Swansea. What's your program? What are you? Debbie, I can't remember all the titles, I'm just going to call up each person here. Debbie, you want to just go up here and collect yourself and gather yourself here? Come on. No, you're all right, don't give her a round of applause. She hasn't deserved it, no. Now, Peter there is very kindly going to give you a 3-minute warning and a 1-minute warning. You want to learn another Irish word? Me and Mike? Oh. Oh, online. Roger, hello, can you hear me? Okay, Ken McCarthy in Waterford, Tony Murphy in Tralee, Eamon Costello in Dublin. If you want to question today. Now, the Irish word for stop is stod. Stod. Want to go? Stod. And again? Stod. Stod. Okay. So when we hold her up, it'll be stod. I know you mean stod. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Don't be looking at me like that. Like, oh, he'll be easy on me. No. In fact, if anything, I've come here, I have to put down a marker. Now, we won't divide up the room left and right here. We'll just do the whole one to start. If you're ready to go, and the clock will start when we shout out. At the last tone of Gasta fades out, the clock will start. Are we ready? A hay! A doe! A tree! No, stop. As I Father Storm here now. God love me. It's very creating the night. Now, the whole idea, as I said, is participation. And we start that one again. When I raise the flag, we start. We ready? A hay, a doe, a tree, a car, a cooey, Gasta!
Oh, that's me. Right. Okay, now see, that's really unfair. I've got to follow that, and then I've got to go before all these lovely people, so I think I'm kind of the warm-up act, but I'll give it a go. Okay, so I'm Debbie Bath, I'm kind of mad on pink, as you might have gathered. I'm a senior academic developer here in Swansea. Now, when Maren, lovely Maren, asked me to do a Gasta, I went, yeah, that'd be great, because I thought it had something to do with cakes. I don't know why, it just kind of conjured up that image. I now know it's nothing whatsoever to do with cakes. So Marin said all I've got to do, which is great, is just talk a bit about my involvement with ALT, really, and what my favourite altc18 moments have been so far. Bearing in mind, we're only in day 2, so I'm sure there'll be wonderful stuff tomorrow, but this is all I've got so far. So here we go, and why I love ALT. Okay, that's a synopsis, really, of my summary of my involvement with ALT. I first started to get to know the lovely people in ALT in 2014. And then I did the Octel course. Does anybody do the Octel course? Yeah. Pay me later, Aaron. And I had a role working in Wales at that time where I was involved in the OER conferences, so talking about the OER 15 conference, where I persuaded a certain somebody sitting in the front and a couple of other somebodies to come and do the chairing for me. And ever since then, I kind of haven't left, really. So that's kind of all the sorts of things that I've been involved in. The Open Education Special Interest Group, I'll also give a quick plug to, because I know Catherine Cronin is quite keen on mentioning that for this year. So if anybody wants to know anything about the OESIG, then let me or Catherine know. I've also put down there that I'm a CMALT hopeful. I don't know if you remember last year, but we had to do a little I will promise. And last year, I will promise to do my CMALT, but I didn't actually do it, so there you go. Hey, right, I'm going to run now. Okay, fab moments, collaborative learning, Snapchat on the go. Anybody use Snapchat? 2, 3, 4. Right, we had a bit of an on-the-go session on the train before we even got here, which was quite good. So I've never used Snapchat before, so the learning started already. Some more fab moments that we've done. Virtually connecting, I took part in that. That was really cool, really enjoyed that. First time I've been a guest on virtually connecting. 2 minutes, okay. Some more fab moments. This is the lovely Suzanne, juggling. You get juggling at ALT, who'd have thought? I can't juggle, by the way. If she was here, she would be juggling, but I can't do that, so you don't get that. But that's also on YouTube, so if anybody missed that, that's all about our Bring Your Own Device for Learning course that we did. There we go, we're on to the Why I Love ALT now. Community, you guys, you make it what it is, really. I get such a sense of warmth and energy, so many opportunities to learn. You're always learning something new, and I just get such a buzz out of coming to this conference. It's the highlight of my year, really. You get to feel part of something. I think my professional values, I like to think I'm an open practitioner. I like to share as much as I can, and above all, we have loads of fun, don't we? And we have some really nice cakes. Did anybody have the cakes just now? I hope there's going to be more cakes tomorrow. Marin, can you promise more cakes, possibly? Yeah. 1 minute left. There we go. I did a little scribble. I didn't have time to finish it, so there's some bits and pieces that I haven't got on there. But I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour. See what I did there? Gasta flavour cakes. See? There you go. But yeah, I think it's great, and I'll be back next year. I'm under time.
You have ruined my moment. I think she deserves a star,
Can you sit down now?
I said go with it, but not too much. So, well done, well done. It's not even coming up. Get the whole one there. So there's my number 2. I had my number 2 list here. This man, my agent, is he? Coming over, my colleagues from Irish Learning Technologist Association, and if you come over to EdTech next year, you can experience more. There is the madness of ALT. So coming over from Ireland, we have Laura Widger and Paul Gorman. Come on. I'll be nice to Laura, but Paul is fair game for anything. No, that just, yeah. I was so close. I was so close to holding it up here. Yeah, that's. Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Yep.
Will you be on time?
No.
Good. Now, we started off, I've made it nice and easy. We're going to start off here with the hain, the dough, tree, car, and then we'll all shout cooey, and then we Gasta. We'll just do a dry run. Are we ready? Starting with the left. Hain, the dough, the tree, Don't think you've still got the idea here. Gusto, not Gasta, a bit of gusto. Will you try again? Gasta!
Okay, Tom, thanks for that very warm introduction. Delighted to be here on behalf of my colleagues Catherine Brune and Alison Egan, who unfortunately couldn't make it, to talk about, okay, the title comes from Paul, it's really difficult. Little acorns, how they grow, looking at fruitful collaborations among professional bodies that hopefully are yielding bountiful engagements. So who are we? We're the Irish Learning Technology Association. In essence, an independent, voluntary community of professionals committed to the development and exchange of knowledge in education. We run a number of initiatives in terms of our annual conference. Generally about 300 people is on every year in May. Hopefully you can make it. Jen Burke Award, a couple of years ago, we were delighted to collaborate with some colleagues nationally in producing the first NMC technology outlook for higher education in Ireland. We have an open access journal in technology enhanced learning, which Tom is one of the main leaders on and we'll be talking about tomorrow. And we're also delighted that with a couple of our Irish colleagues, in particular one project, which is a special edition of the TEL journal, which was focused on VLEs, that's up for awards tonight, along with another DCU project. If you want to find out anything more about ILTA, have a look at our website and follow us on Twitter. So why are we here today? As professional bodies, that outside-in perspective is sometimes quite hard to get. And one of the ways we've always been thinking about what are we doing it right, are we going in the right direction? And collaborating with other professional bodies, looking at what our colleagues are doing nationally and internationally is always a good way of achieving that. With this in mind, we've been developing our collaborative networks with our colleagues internationally over the last few years. ALT, we signed an MOU with a couple of years ago. We've Ascolite, we've our colleagues across the water in the US in terms of the OLC. And we've been looking at how we're developing these networks. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Paul, who's going to talk about some of the common issues and how we've been addressing them.
Thanks, Laura. So when we looked over the global garden fence, we identified the following four, I suppose, issues or commonalities, I suppose, at a higher level for professional bodies. So around collaboration, dissemination, governance, and leadership. So we've all kind of interacted around these issues, and I suppose identifying the issues is good, but I suppose operationalizing or sort of addressing them in a collaborative fashion is another day's work. So the ways that we've done things recently, so for example, we've worked on, well, how did we do it? We got involved, essentially. And so we got involved with projects like the Blended Learning Essentials, recruitment of tutors, for example, in terms of continuing professional development. We've got a partnership with ALT around CMALT. We've engaged with the IELOL professional development strategy from the OLC, and there's an EU equivalent called Empower. We're always mindful of promoting each other's activities, so we do a lot of crowdsourcing for projects. We obviously we do a lot of conference participation, so we have under the MOU that ALT comes to us and we go to their conferences as well. And we'd love to see some of you over. Well, increasingly there are a lot of ALT members who are coming over to us for our conference. And importantly, around consultancy, around governance, for example, around steering groups that we might have in our respective organizations. So, for example, we've got representative on the strategic plan or the strategic group for research and learning technologies. So a lot of this stuff is very reciprocal and very useful for all of us. Okay, so where are we now then? Obviously all of the professional bodies are geographically dispersed, but we were lucky last year for last year's EdTech conference where we managed to get most of the heads of the bodies together, which was absolutely fantastic at the EdTech conference in Ireland. So from left to right, we've got Don Parrish on the left from Ascolite, Martin Weller down here, who was ubiquitous anyway. We've got Meg Benkei, who was talking about the OLC, myself, and then Maren. What are we doing next? We're looking around leadership program webinar series to put together so that we can kind of do some comparative analysis globally in terms of how people are addressing the e-leadership, I suppose, narrative. Looking at quality assurance standards for blended learning through looking at I suppose, we're finding it difficult, certainly in Ireland, to get those standards through, so we're looking forward to collaborating with others. And for us, pressingly, we're going through a change in ALT governance.
5, 4, 3.
And it's been great to see you all. And come to EdTech next year. This is a savage method Thanks, Tom.
Tom, you have to leave me at my closing line. So it's in EdTech next year. We're not sure we'll have lifesavers, but we'll definitely have Tom.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Family from Ascoli is watching in. I'm absolutely available to go wherever it is there. Anyway, the timing is a bit fierce, and I've just contacted a colleague and friend there. I've just asked her if it's okay to her. The therapy has worked. Her very first Gasta, she was told, in fairness, she was told in 7 minutes and found out it was 5 minutes on the day. So that wasn't a nice thing to do. But harsh, but fair. Now, Clint Lalande is now joining us up here now, so we just let him get himself ready. Now this time I think we won't be doing left and right, but we will be doing left and right, but it's a bit of sort of lateral movement. So as we count, we'll all start off to the left, to the right, because they're just sort of the whole Max Boy graphs, you know, sort of the hands and the go on. Right, so just do this bit warm up before things get started out. You have to shout anything, just get the hands moving. I'm watching here, who's not getting involved. Don't let me down. Okay, that's enough. We just have to wear you out. Are we ready for this? Say when you're ready. Because the time.
All right. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We're ready.
Yeah.
So we'll all start off, and you'll all start off to your left. Osquailga. We ready? A hey, a do, a tree, a car, a gooey. Gasta.
All right, I've titled my Gasta, When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a Learning Technologist. Said no child ever. 5 minutes is too short for a long intro on who I am, but suffice to say, I wear a whole bunch of different hats back in British Columbia where I work. I'm the manager of EdTech for a regional consortium called BC Campus. I'm also associate faculty at Royal Roads University in the School of Education and Technology, and I'm a community steward for an organization in BC similar to ALT called ETUG, the Educational Technology User Group. In addition to this being the 25th anniversary of ALT, it is also next year the 25th anniversary of ETUG, and next year is also my personal 25th anniversary as an educational technologist, learning technologist. Although, to be honest, for the first 10 years of my career, I didn't actually know that I was an educational technologist. It's a career that I fell into, and I suspect I'm not the only one in the room that fell into it. At any rate, when I was a kid, growing up in northern Canada, like most kids, my childhood dreams, this is for Martin, were to become a professional ice hockey player. But once I realized that you actually have to have some skills to become a professional hockey player, I altered my dream to something that I thought was a little bit more achievable. I wanted to be a professional Nessie hunter. I even had a backup plan should Nessie hunting fall through. See, in Canada we have this similar mythical creature called the Ogopogo in Lake Okanagan. So I thought, well, if I couldn't make the big show in Scotland hunting Nessie, I could try my luck in the local leagues at Lake Okanagan. But at no time did I dream of becoming a learning technologist. But 25 years later, here I am, and here's a few things I've noticed in our field. So here's 3 things. First off, education technology has become simpler and more complex. Sorry for any mathematicians who have actually mangled a mathematical word there in simplex, but let me explain. On the simple side, in 2007, when I used Skype for the first time to bring a guest speaker into a class for an instructor, it took me 6 weeks to coordinate this. And the biggest hurdle I had was convincing our IT department that this new thing called Skype wasn't some kind of secret backdoor into our network for Eastern European hackers. Skype traffic in and out of our network, I don't know about that. Today, a digitally literate instructor can bring a guest into their classroom in about 5 minutes. On the more complex side, I doubt the learning technologist of 1994 had to worry about things like the student data retention policy of the overhead projector sitting in the corner of the room. Which brings me to observation number 2. Learning technology has become more critical. I think this is an area that we can continue to grow in, but we've made some great strides in, especially in the past 5 to 10 years, thanks in no small part to a lot of people who are at this conference who I really admire the critical work that they're doing. Early in my career, I was often cast in the role of being an evangelist, and some of you may have had that in your title at one time. It was quite vogue to be an evangelist. Today we're much less evangelists and much more critical of not only technology, but often the unseen processes and unspoken processes that drive technology adoption in education. And I'm happy to be at a conference actually that has an entire stream dedicated to critical perspectives in learning technology. Finally, observation number 3, a learning technologist is not an instructional designer. Perhaps it's the Canadian in me that phrases this as a not, because sometimes when you ask a Canadian who they are, the answer you get is not American. But I don't mean this pejoratively, and I don't mean to pit these roles against each other, because both are valuable and important roles in maintaining high standards of teaching and learning excellence in our institutions. But I really do think that these are 2 separate roles. They're complementary and need to be informed by each other's practice, but distinct fields requiring different skills and attributes. And I often feel that the profession that we call learning technologist or educational technologist is often undervalued in our institutions, and they tend to get tacked on to an equally important, but really for me a separate role, and that is instructional designer. It's this 3rd point that's actually brought me to ALT this year, because I think ALT has a really good model in the CMALT program to help raise the profile of learning technologists, and it's something that I'm hoping that I can possibly bring back to Canada. And one of the reasons why I'm here is to learn much more about CMALT. Okay, there you go. In the end, not the career I dreamed of as a kid, no professional hockey careers for me, but I can honestly say that now I've arrived, there's not another career that I would rather be doing. Thank you.
Of learning technology. So, I should sort of say that, I mean, these are sort of very brief, sort of throwing out ideas, so I would encourage people, if anybody has raised something or something, have a chat with them afterwards like that. So, I just had to check with Donna, but I just thought that it's a beautiful name, it's Donna Langclaw. Oh. Yeah, I thought that's not bad. That's not bad. No, I was just saying to Paul, if we have EdTech next year, it's like a TED Talk. I've never had these fancy things like that, so I think that's certainly added to the whole thing. So no, can I just sort of say, by the way, you've been a great participator. We just sort of up the ante now a little bit more. So what we do now, because I think it's at this stage you've been doing a lot of sitting all day. It's good for the old veins. So we'll start off in the standing position for the one. Then we'll go down to the Hain, and then you don't have to fully sit down. So it's a Hain, a Doe, a Tree, a Cooey, and then arms up for the Gasta. We all stand up. Come on. It's late in the day. This is actually good for your health. I'm actually going to stop deep vein thrombosis and all of this. And also, I'm here with Skype and learning technology. Anybody who's watching on the stream, if you want to get one of your friends to photograph you taking part in these sort of warm-up exercises. Are we all ready? A Hain, a Doe, a Tree, a Catter, a Cooey, Gasta!
All right. Is this thing, yeah, I am not a learning technologist. I'm an anthropologist. My name is Donna, and I have opinions about things. And I'm not going to apologize for that. So in the work that I get to do in this sector, which is weird for me because I am not of the sector, but anthropologists work outside of everywhere they are, so that's fine. I have been tasked occasionally with going in and having people talk about what they do when they go online to do teaching and learning things. And early on, I was doing this thing that some of you may be familiar with, mapping practice using visitors and residents, and we were arguing against natives and immigrants because we didn't want people to pigeonhole themselves in really, really, really not useful ways. And so what ended up happening, of course, was that people started to pigeonhole themselves in the different way that we had given them because we were still talking about identity. And what I wanted to do was have them talk about practice.
So this triangle represents the opportunity that they have to talk about what they do, regardless of who they are. And I think that one of the things that ends up coming up over and over again is when people talk about what they do, they end up talking about the people among whom they do these things. So we start off with practice, and all of a sudden we're talking about people. We're talking about the places that they go because there are certain people there. They talk about the places that they don't want to go to because there are certain people there. They're talking about networks. They're talking about the networks that they have. They're talking about the networks that they want to have. They're talking about the networks that they avoid because they're toxic and they don't serve them. People don't get enough of an opportunity to talk about these sorts of things. And I think it's wrong. I think that there's too much emphasis on what are you going to do? Where are you going to do it? And not enough about with whom are you going to do it and why are you going to do that? So, the other thing that ends up happening when we have people map their practices is that they talk a lot about visibility. We talk about people who are stars on social media. We talk about the people that we see all the time. They shine so brightly. I see them everywhere. Surely I know who that person is because I can see them all the time. And you might know some things, but you don't know everything. You know the things that they show you. That doesn't mean you know them. You can interpret the things that they show you, and they can make deliberate choices about the things that they show you, but that's not the same thing as knowing. So when I think about people and their practices, and I think about the ways that we want to encourage people to do things, I think that too often we get bogged down in, but who can see me? And look at that person over there, and aren't they amazing? I want people to think about the intimacy of their practices. I want people to think with people who care for them. One of the things that my mother and I do together when we have an opportunity to walk is we walk at dusk and we peer in people's windows because we want to be opinionated about the color that they painted the wall and the sofa that they chose. And you do it at dusk because they haven't gone the blinds down yet and you can see into. So one of the exercises that I have started doing with my colleague Laurie Phipps is based on the idea of a window, that you open a window into your practice and you invite people to look in the window and talk to you about what they see about your practice. Not just the stuff that's visible, but the stuff they know about because they know you and because you trust them to tell them things about what it means. I feel like a window is an inadequate metaphor, the sort of thing that I'm trying to encourage people to do here. I'm trying to encourage people to leverage their intimate networks of people who care about them, not random workshops of people who you just met, who can Google you and think that they know you if you're visible. I want for people to talk with the people who you want to invite into your home. Who are the people who are already in your network? How can you open a door to the people that you want to hear from about your practice and what it means to you, and what it means to them? How do we create those moments of intimate reflection, places of care that don't come from some abstracted notion of visibility and importance,
5, 4,
but from home?
3, 2, 1.
Start.
I don't know what it says about the Irish psyche, but the only two people who've gone overtime were my fellow compatriots and colleagues. It's like sort of Darragh O'Brien sort of says, like, other countries have rules and guidelines and laws. We have, sure, you shouldn't really do that. As he said, we have a finer understanding of the greyer condition of the human psyche. So, we have, Leo Heverman coming up for last but not least. So just round of applause for so with any, Laurie, has anybody tweeted in, showing themselves going up and down, or?
I've already tweeted, you do.
Oh, excellent. Eamon Costello, Tony Murphy, you're watching in. You should be doing this. Now, I've got you to do a bit of physical exercise. Now we're going to do a bit of mental exercise. You've been absolutely excellent at the Halo 3 car Cooey. But how do you fancy doing Cooey Carter? 3, though, hey? Have you a dry run? Oh, this could end badly, Martin. This could end very badly. But you know what? I have great faith in this group. You've been absolutely excellent, better than the useless lot that I normally do with every May. No, honestly, you really have been, I was honestly so nervous that this wouldn't work. I said, how will this work? You have been absolutely brilliant. So we'll just do a dry run, because we won't put Leo off. So it'll be Cooey, Catter, 3, Do, Hey. Ready? Cooey, Catter, 3, Do, Hey. Well, you don't need rehearsals at all. They're really good. I thought that this would be great. Lads were useless. Anyway, so are we ready? And a big, really loud this time, and a huge Gasta this time. We ready? Cooey, Catter, 3, Do, Hey.
Thank you very much. Some of you, no doubt, in this room will recognize what this image is of. Slightly blurry, and not the best quality, sorry about that. And I will now explain it for those who don't know. In recognition of this auspicious occasion of 25 years of ALT, I wanted to talk a bit about my personal experience of ALT and the role that it's played for me. And so I first became involved in ALT around 10 years ago, as many in this room might say, only 10 years ago, when I started attending the M25 Learning Technology group. Technically, actually, at that time, the M25 Learning Technology group was not yet actually an alt-sig. That was soon to follow. It was on the horizon, precisely because the community attending M25 were very much aligned in spirit and overlapping, also in practice, with the wider alt community. And really, I have to say, joining that group was a surprisingly transformative experience to have when attending an event named after a motorway. The M25 had been named when it was originally set up in the early noughties to be a group in which learning technologists and their ilk and their variants could meet up and talk about what they've been doing. Because normally in this type of role, you're working in smallish teams within an institution. Sometimes you need to learn some new stuff, or even just for your own sanity, really, you need to get out and talk to other people. And so the meetings of the M25 are generally a presentation and Q&A format, sometimes through other kinds of more experimental formats as well, or with special guests. And after attending and participating in this group for a few years, I managed to replace someone who'd stepped down from the organizing group, or as ALT call us, the officers. Sometimes we like to call ourselves the admirals. So the M25 group, I like to think, exemplifies the ALT spirit. It's an ALT in microcosm, by the community, for the community, or as one could say, in the M25 and indeed in ALT, the community is the curriculum. What makes this possible is that our community is blessed by a willingness or an openness, if you like, to discuss our practices and our obstacles and to share our work in progress that sometimes doesn't quite look like a solution just yet. Ah, yes, solutions. Remember solutions. Industry was awash with them a few years back. IT companies were so advanced then, I know I was working in them at the time, they knew your solution already before they even knew what your problem was. And I think now the language has somewhat evolved over time, but solutionism certainly persists. And it still pays to be wary of the kind of solutions that can be purchased with a license fee. In fact, what I think is great about the ALT community is that over the years, we've got better at talking about problems that we recognize are difficult, wicked, and intractable, that no solution, especially off the shelf, is going to provide a quick fix to. So how does the ALT community do that? I love this ALT image about being greater than the sum of our parts. The ALT community, through its conferences, its special interest groups, its mailing list, and really importantly also, through its open access journal, Research and Learning Technology, which I have a peer review overdue for right now, opens up spaces for sharing and increasing our understanding of these problems. Human problems about coping with change, about supporting colleagues and students, about limited resources and contexts where the need for our assistance is great. These spaces and the conversations that are able to be contained within them are a lifeline to those of us working in this field. And through participating in them, personally, I've gained knowledge, support, a professional network to turn to when needed, but also colleagues and friends who are a vital part of making this work worth doing. So yes, don't bring me solutions, bring me problems. Thank you, ALT. Thank you all.
I understand we're really under pressure for time, so I'll just take a few seconds. First of all, thanks very much to Peter and Laurie for helping me keep this madness on track very much. All our participants, I should say, who, it's not easy coming up here, and I'm sure they didn't know what to expect. Most of all, I mean, this works because everybody gets involved. So, from myself, 1,000 thank yous. Good Mila Mahabut. Thanks very much to Martin and Maren for taking this faith, and thanks to Deborah. Cheers.
Now, this was the first Gasta ALT, and I hope not the last one. We are going to go straight into ALT's annual general meeting. So if you're a member or you're an interested participant, we really invite you to stay. Otherwise, we look forward to welcoming you back at the Midland Hotel at 6:30 this evening to start our gala. Thank you very much again for participating in our first Gasta, and we'll see you this evening or now at the AGM. Right, fantastic. We're going to get straight underway with the AGM, and I'm going to hand over to ALT's President, Martin Weller, to open the proceedings. So please, before Martin gets us underway, make sure you sign in. This is an important part of our annual governance. Signing in sheets are going round. Also, voting cards are going round. If you are a member, there will be instructions on the screen on how to vote at each resolution, and you should have a card to vote with. My colleagues here from the staff team will help you vote. If you're not sure how, or you're not sure if you're eligible, we have a list to check. So thank you very much for joining us at the AGM this afternoon. Also, just before we get underway, we're looking for 2 people to volunteer to be tellers at the AGM and count votes. I have 1 volunteer. Thank you very much, James. Any other volunteers? Elizabeth, perfect. Thank you very much. So Elizabeth and James will be the tellers. During the voting, please could you get stand up and then stand at the front, and don't forget to count your own vote.
Not really. No, I'm okay here. We're okay. We'll go from here. Okay. Okay, hi everyone. So thanks for coming to the AGM. I can't promise it's going to be quite as fun as interactive as the Gasta, but you know, we'll lose this. So thanks for coming. I also want to extend our thanks and welcome to people from other organisations. So Kim, as I said, from ETAG in Canada, Tom and the ILTA crowd from Ireland, Tamsin Jones from the European Association for Technology and Enhanced Learning, and Kath Gladden from the Association of Employment and Learning Providers. So Sheila and I are just going to give some brief highlights of the past year. Do you want to go first, Sheila?
Yeah, sorry, I'll just, well, it's been a really action-packed year for us over the last year. And you can see some highlights there. We've had the lovely Brian, again, doing some graphics for us. I suppose there were a lot of highlights in terms of our journal, in terms of the OER conference, and in terms of this conference as well, 25th year. There's been a lot of work by all the people in the committee, and yeah, it's just been almost too much to share, and we are a bit short of time. So Martin, is there anything else you want to highlight?
Just I've gone wrong already. I meant to ask for apologies and proxy votes. So do you have those?
Yep, no apologies. 6 proxy votes.
So just on my highlights here, I think just to say I think marks kind of the end of a transition period for ALT, which Maren and the trustees have kind of very skillfully negotiated. I think particularly this moving to be a distributed organisation is kind of very important for ALT, and the structure we have now kind of points towards longer term stability, I think. So I think it's important for any modern organisation to always reflect on its practices, and ALT kind of exemplifies that. I also have to say, as the OER guy, the OER conference, the one in Bristol this year, and every year is kind of a real highlight for me. I think it's become a real international fixture, and I think that's really moved on over the past few years. Okay, so on to the business. So approval of the minutes of the last annual general meeting held in Liverpool on 6th September 2017. There's an accurate record of the meeting. I'm going to need a proposer and a seconder. Peter and I need a seconder. James. Oh, I need to pass forward. All right, thank you. So those are approved as an accurate record of the meeting. Thank you. We don't have any matters arising. Are there any matters arising that anyone wants to raise? No matters arising. Thank you. So we zipped through that. Good. So thank you. We're back on time. That's the way to do it. So moving on to the annual report and accounts, I'm very pleased to hand over to Daniel for this part.
Thank you. Welcome to this meeting, and thank you for attending. My name is Daniel Clark. I'm the Honorary Treasurer of ALT, and it's my privilege to present to you the annual report and accounts. This is a really important part of our governance and our commitment to openness, that we are transparent with you about the resources that we get, the membership fees and so on, and how we're using them. So it is important that these are made available to you. And when I was looking at them and reviewing them, I was thinking, I've just finished 3 years as Treasurer of ALT. And as Martin said, in that time, we've seen some really big changes in how ALT runs and operates. So we've moved to being an independent organisation, a charitable incorporated organisation, which means the trustees are not personally liable, which is a huge relief to all of us. We've moved away from our partnership with Brooks to become a virtual organisation and directly employing people. We've deliberately kept a lot of that invisible to you, our members, because it shouldn't interrupt the way we sort of deliver on our strategy. But over time, this should make us a much more sort of agile organisation and well able to cope with what the future throws at us. Now, becoming an independent organisation and employing people directly does bring a little bit of extra risk. And it makes it that much more important that we are financially stable and that we are, say, careful with our resources. So I'm glad to say in the current year, the year ended last January, we did record a small surplus of £24,000. So that's a good result, clearly being careful on that side. What we've actually done is decided to transfer a bit of that money to increase a reserve that we hold. So we have the reserve is now standing at £160,000 in our accounts. Now that reserve doesn't have any legal effect. What it is, it's a sort of rainy day fund. It's a marker to us as trustees, to you as members, that the money is set aside for emergencies. It's been calculated as 6 months of operating expenditure of ALT. So the idea is that if there was a absolute catastrophe, every bit of income dried up, ALT could run for 6 months, which would at least buy us some breathing space. Now, that's not something we expect to happen. This is just us trying to be prudent. It is in line with best practice in the charity sector. So that's something that you'll see going through the accounts is a slight increase in that reserve. The other thing I'd like to draw your attention to is, and I hope will be of assurance to you as our members and stakeholders, is that we have had, as usual, an independent audit of our accounts. So auditors who are not connected with us, who are professionals, have come in, reviewed our accounts, reviewed our financial record keeping, signed off their audit report, which is quite lengthy, but what it amounts to is that they look at whether there's anything in the accounts that they could consider to be misleading or misstated, and basically they're saying there isn't. They are happy that the accounts are true and fair stated. So hopefully that's something that sort of provides assurance to you that what we're presenting here is correct. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, just sort of reflect on really, is that if you look through the accounts, sometimes there's an impression that ALT it feels like a very sort of large organisation with a lot of reach and sort of big staff and offices everywhere and stuff like that. You look at these, and our total turnover is 485,000 a year, which in the scheme of things is not vast. And the fact that on that level of resource so much is accomplished really is testament to the amount of time and energy and effort that people put in. And I think that, again, that's just something worth reflecting on as we look through these. So that was everything I had to say about sort of presenting the accounts to you, but I'm very happy to take any questions if there are any. Yes, apologies to Bella, who requested that I present the accounts through the medium of interpretive dance, but having considered that carefully, I thought perhaps it might go a bit wrong, so sorry, Bella. Next year, maybe, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to propose a resolution that the annual report and accounts be adopted. I need a proposer and seconder for that, if I may. Proposer, Honor, and seconder, Nick. Do we have a... Okay.
If you are entitled to vote, you should have a voting card, and I think Daniel will now ask first for votes for, then against, and then abstentions, and we'll also count proxy votes. So please keep your hand in the air until you've actually voted and be counted. So
okay. So the resolution is that the annual report and accounts be adopted. Those in favour? So yeah, if you keep your hands up, please. Thanks. Are we having a recount? 43.
and we're counting 6 proxy votes for, so 4 to 9.
Okay. Are those against? And abstentions? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I just want to say, yes, as every year, I'm very thankful that we have Daniel as a trustee, because this stuff is beyond me. So it was someone I can really trust knows what they're doing. So thank you very much, Daniel. The next part of this is to just approve the appointment of the auditors for next year's accounts. So I need a proposer and a seconder to appoint David Cadwallader and co-accountants for next year. So proposer, James and Elizabeth, and I think we vote on this again. We don't have to vote. Thank you. They're approved. So that brings us on to award of honorary life membership. I chaired the panel for this. I want to say the person who's about to get it. I think we do a kind of Oscars thing, don't we, where we don't reveal who it is. So the person who's the winner, it was a unanimous decision to give this person life membership. They've been a stalwart member of the ALT community throughout their career and contributed a lot to UK sector in particular. I'm going to let Sheila say a few words because she is better placed.
Thanks, Martin. So I think I've been really lucky in my career that I've worked with and continue to work with a number of very inspiring women, many of whom are in the room today. And I think I'm really excited about this award because the recipient of this honorary award, it's the highest honour that we give, and it's recognition of a very significant contribution to the organisation by an individual. And I think this year's individual, she's played a role in ALT, I think probably since its outset. She's been a trustee, she's been a vice chair, a chair, she's also hosted a conference. And even when she stepped back from her role in governance, she still was a really active part of the community. And she's done many, many things, including setting up the ALT Scotland group. I think in everything she does, she brings grace, intelligence, criticality, and her scholarly practice. And most of all, and most important for me, her sense of fun and laughter. And I can honestly say I don't think I've ever laughed as much in my life as when I've been working with this person, even at times when our laughter was tinged maybe with a bit of hysteria. But I feel so privileged to have worked alongside her for the past 5 years. And I'm still in denial that this person has taken early retirement. I'm still hoping that she's just going to walk back in from holiday next week. But at this point, I would just like to say it just gives me huge pleasure to present this year's Honorary Life Membership to Linda Kriener.
Thank you everyone for this. I'm quite overwhelmed really and feel very, very honoured to receive this. Thank you to all the ALT trustees and also to all fellow members for this award. I do think something that's given to you by your peers is one of the most meaningful awards that you can receive in your career, and I'm really grateful to get this. Now, ALT has certainly been very dear to my heart throughout my career. I actually started my career in learning technology in January 1993, so it's the same year as ALT was established. So it's been there all along, and I have to say that any involvement and time that I've given to ALT, I've had back tenfold. In terms of professional networks, deepening understanding of the field, and most importantly, making friends. Friendship and fun, I think we've had a lot of that, and there's been a lot of that in this year's conference as well. So it's been a privilege to be involved in ALT and to have played a small part in its development over the years. I'm very pleased as well that ALT Scotland is now a thriving part of the ALT family and that membership is growing year on year. So thanks again to everyone. I hope to keep in touch, and here's to the next 25 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. So we've made some changes to the Constitution this year for ALT, which Sheila and Maren are going to run you through now.
Sheila, would you like to say a few words maybe just in general, and I can maybe help talk through the technicalities?
Absolutely. So as Daniel and Martin have both alluded to, it's been the last couple of years, there's been quite a lot of changes to the organisation, particularly around our new strategy, which we launched last year, and this year by becoming a virtual organisation and moving away from books. At the same time as doing that we have felt that actually we needed to maybe make some changes to our governance structures to support the organisation better. And obviously we've changed our charitable status as well. So what we want to do is take you through some of the proposed changes. And the reason we're doing this is really for the stability of the organisation and thinking towards the next 25 years. And also, as it says in the slide there, it's really bringing us in line with best practice for with the Charity Commission as well. So we really feel this is timely and necessary for the future development of the organisation and association. Is there anything you would like to add at that point, Maren?
No, I think we can probably jump right in and just go through the key points. As Sheila was saying, there are a number of changes to be proposed, and the first one is regarding how we appoint roles of the President, the Chair and the Vice Chair in ALT. So as many of you will be familiar, currently and for the past, this has been an annually rotating role. And I think we've identified that while we've been extremely fortunate as a professional body to have very able and engaged trustees that make the life of staff like myself really easy and straightforward, it is a huge challenge to find really well-informed, good quality trustees on an annual basis to take the most responsible role in our organisation. And it also means that we as staff provide much greater continuity. And as we all think that the membership should have, the greatest perspective on what we do as a sort of from a strategic perspective, I really welcome this proposal to extend the term of these most important trustee roles, the most active, the most responsible for the governance, to the Charity Commission as well, to bring them in line with the same terms of service that all the other trustees have. It is quite unusual to have the chair of an organisation rotate annually. And over the last 6 years as CEO of ALT, I've been very fortunate to have 6 wonderful chairs to work with, but we do only work together for 12 months before, the next one arrives. So this makes great practical sense and does minimize our risk. And similarly, as we are quite a streamlined, small organization and we want to use the resources as best we can, we've also proposed that the maximum number of trustees overall goes from 13 to 10, which will still give us enough breadth to have the governance that we really need, but doesn't mean that we have to unnecessarily have larger committees that we really need to. So I think those are the specific changes to the boards and the roles. And we're moving on now to explain regarding how trustees are elected and appointed. So as you are familiar as members, at the moment all trustees are elected openly. Anyone who is a member can express an interest in roles, but we don't advertise, as other charities do, specific job descriptions for, let's say, being a treasurer. And in Daniel, we actually have the first treasurer who has an accountancy background and is fully qualified to advise us financially. So we want to catch up with what other charities like the Wikimedia Foundation, for example, are doing, and we want to make the recruitment of the trustees more transparent, so it's very clear what you volunteer to do, because it is a role of great responsibility. So instead of appointing all trustees in the same manner, we propose that half of all trustees will still be elected openly and members can express an interest, and they will be the same as they are now, but that they are specific roles, including the chair, the treasurer and the vice chair, whom will recruit with job descriptions, and that instead of having open elections, which can sometimes lead to those who are most popular or well-known voices being elected, we will give the existing board the final say in their appointment. Again, this is probably quite commonplace in most charities, but a big step for us and a big change. So I'm just going to pause there because I think, Sheila, we might want to pause for questions briefly in case anybody has questions on these 2 points.
Absolutely.
So if you do have questions, please raise your hand or let us know. Okay, there don't seem to be any questions right now, so should we move on? I think so. I think there's 2 more changes that we've had a lot of feedback on from membership in the last year as the organisation has grown. And one of the areas it's grown specifically over the last few years is member groups. when I joined ALT 10 years ago, ALT Scotland was kind of the member group, and the M25 group wasn't yet an ALT group. But now we have member groups all across the UK, and our governance hasn't really caught up with that. Our governance doesn't provide a direct avenue for those member groups from Northern Ireland, from Wales, from all parts of the UK and different parts of the country to have a voice directly in the governance. So the idea is that we'll make an overarching committee, which is really going to be a new forum for member groups to talk to each other and with each other and have more direct opportunity to collaborate alongside the conference committees, alongside the journal editors, the blog editors, and all other groups involved in the governance of ALT, and that the assembly will be chaired by the president. Now, as you can imagine, I actually tried to make a slide for you of what our current structure looks like, and I ended up having 109 arrows. And I gave up, if I'm honest with you, because I thought no one will believe that this is how ALT is currently organized and how many different, indirect reporting lines and direct responsibilities there are. So this is why we're proposing this constitutional change today, but there'll be a transition period until the constitution comes fully into effect, which is at the next AGM, so in 12 months. And we want to work with all of our existing member groups to get it right, to make this transition. And here you can see what we currently think is going to be a blueprint for the new ALT assembly, so that the existing groups will still operate just as they do now, special interest groups, member groups, steering groups for the journal, conference committees, and there might be other groups like CMALT lead assessors, which are not a formal group right now, but that we will work together as a community to get that right, because there's many people, 3,500 or thereabouts, involved in ALT, and we want to make sure as many of them have a voice. So just to maybe conclude, and Sheila might have more things to add, here is how we propose to put this into practice. The trustees are putting it to the vote today to ask you to approve these new changes to the constitutions, which will come into effect in 12 months' time at the next AGM. And that's why we have a secondary resolution for the 3 trustees, where previously there would have been the rotation of roles to retain their positions for 12 months to give us some stability until we have the new election processes and the ALT assembly in place. And that we will work together as a community to put the ALT assembly into place over the next 12 months, so that our governance, as Sheila said, will hopefully be more stable in terms of accountability and management day to day, but will also, I think importantly, give a greater voice to our membership all across the country and also internationally. So I hope, Sheila, that's covered some of the technical parts. Did you want to add anything?
Not really. I think you've covered it very well. And just, I suppose, just to say that this is not a power grab by Martin and I. You know, we are going to retire. This is just a temporary...
President for life.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure about him. Yeah. But, yeah, again, just to reiterate that this is really, we see this as almost the final part of a jigsaw that's been coming together over the last couple of years around the future of the organisation. So, yeah, that's all I would really add to that. Yeah, has anyone got any questions, though? Because I know there's quite a lot of information to take in. But obviously Maren has explained it beautifully and succinctly for everyone. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Okay, can we have a proposer? Thank you, Sarah. The seconder. And then we need to vote. So have we got our tellers?
Again, please keep your hands in the air.
So vote for... I can't read it from here. The Constitution attached and this resolution be adopted as the Constitution of the CAO in substitution for at the exclusion of the existing Constitution as of 4th September 2019. So for... Oh, I vote as well. Sorry. 43, and we had the 6 proxy votes in. Okay. Against? 0, and abstentions? 1, 2. James. Thank you. So that's passed and recorded.
So just to explain to you, the legal advice was very clear that we had to have a secondary motion in order to make this possible for us to have the constitution adopted, which you've just passed, which is that the following trustees retain their roles, which is Sheila, Nicola and Daniel, who are going to act as chair, vice chair and treasurer respectively, and that will then be in accordance with the new institution for the next 12 months. So we're going to need to do the same and vote on that as well.
Okay, proposer? Go on then, James. Seconder? Stephen? And tell us again what voting is. You don't get to sit down much, do you? So voting for these trustees keep their roles. No, but can we? 42. And 6 proxy votes against the resolution. 0 abstentions. That's 5. So how many was there? 7. Thank you. So that's recorded. Thank you. That's quite a big moment. So thank you, everyone. Good. We'll move on to Chair's Award, which is done by the Chair. Our first Chair's Award. Over to you.
So it's another first for the conference. So I know we're having another first tonight in terms of awards with the Research Awards as part of our Learning Technologies Award. But this is an award that we have talked about for a while, about maybe having another award for someone who doesn't maybe fit into the Learning Technologist Award, or maybe hasn't quite got has had long enough to get a lifetime, an honorary membership award, but someone who's making a significant contribution to our community nonetheless. And actually, we were kind of spurred into action by this, by yourselves, by our community, and I think the application that we received actually made my decision very, very easy about this. And I think the person who's getting this is normally behind the scenes at many things, and particularly at the conference. And he makes sure that everything goes smoothly and that he meets our strategic objectives, particularly around openness. And not only does he provide almost single-handedly the live streaming for our conferences, he's also developed a new platform for an open source submission platform for the conference, and he shares that with the community as well. I'm probably giving this away if you haven't guessed who it is already. But I think the work that this person does in terms of openness and particularly things like the Tags Explorer, it's not just the work he does for ALT, it's not just his job, which he does like all our ALT staff members incredibly well and goes above and beyond what anyone would expect of him all the time. But he shares back wider to the community, and I think in particular the work that he did in Tags Explorer, it allowed so many communities a view on their interactions that was never possible before, and that continues to be used, and he continues to develop that. And I think he's just such a great model, a role model for our community about being, that person Donna was talking about, opening a window into your practice. I think this person has opened all the doors and all the windows, and he's let so many people in and let people then open their own doors into their practice as well. So I'm, again, really, really delighted to award Martin Hoxie with the inaugural Chairs Award.
It's a long walk from back there. Thank you very much. Now I have a job I can't explain to my parents, and now an award I can't explain to my parents. This is going well. It would have been easier if you just gave me a chair. But anyway, I've been very fortunate to work with a number of ALT members in my career, and including Linda Craner, who was one of the first people I worked with at a higher education institution, so it's, I think, very fitting that Linda's been awarded today as well. My first ALT conference was actually 2009 at this very venue, and it was a great opportunity to see so many people I'd heard about and read about face to face, and the passion, the care and thought that I saw from a wide range of presentations has really informed my practice to this day. So it's really ALT members that have created me, so it's your fault.
Thanks, Martin. So it's now my role to say thank you to members and trustees who are coming to the end of the service. And we have some presents. Good. Oh, we get to give presents out. So first of all, thanks, members. Journal editor Amanda Jeffries. Is Amanda here? Hey, come down, Amanda.
Who've been at nearly 20 ALTs over the last several years. And yes, can I just reiterate what Martin said? It's always been a very friendly, caring and compassionate place to meet and share practice. And it's been a privilege to make it part of my professional life. So thank you very much. And I'm sure there are lots of other people who will be able to carry on the good work that we're doing. So thank you.
Also say thank you to the blog editor, Santanu Vasant. He's not here. Hello? Oh, good. Hi. Thank you for your work. Trustees who are coming into their term. Neil Morris, trustee and chair of the editorial board. I think Neil's not here, is he? Right. And Neil did some sterling work, particularly steering the journal through a tricky period. Our very own James Clay, trustee and former chair of the FE committee. And my favourite proposer, so we have a gift for you.
My first ALT was 2003 in Sheffield, and I hated it. I'm glad things have changed. But what I would say is when I joined the trustees, as I was elected, but I was also chair of the FE committee, I think over the last 6 years we have seen FE become much more engaged and interacting with ALT, and I'm really pleased to see that change. So I feel like I've had a bit of an impact. So, but it is on to good and better things.
And finally, Shirley Evans, trustee and honorary secretary, but I think Shirley's not here, so she might be watching. Thank you, Shirley. Which brings us on to the last thing, which is also another first. Is that right? It's just so many firsts. So this year we're having a CMALT ceremony. So the closing highlight of the year's AGM. All members who have achieved or renewed the CMALT accreditation in the past 12 months are going to be invited onto stage for the first annual CMALT ceremony. So if you're one of those people, please come up.
Do you want me to read out the names? Okay, so I'm going to... Okay, so we have Lorna Campbell, Richard Beggs, Vicky Dale, Richard Clarkson, Adam Ells, Sarah Knight, Carl Luke, Christina Ramsey, Ania Patel, Agatha Stadza, Amy Sampson, Chris Sheridan, Lynn Taylorson, Julie Voss, Richard Walker, Gemma Whitten. Oh no, and it goes over the page. Wow. Oh no, it's the same page. So, well, and if I've missed anybody out, please come down. Congratulations to you all.
Well, I'm just thrilled to have been part of the process, and it's supported by reflective practice, and it's a great honour to be the first senior certified member. Thank you.
I think if you all come along, we'll find your certificates as we get there. Sheila, you need to be in the picture. You are congratulating everyone. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we officially close the AGM. Thank you, everyone, and see you next year.